the previous segment, we began discussing what is so special about Sapiens language. One unique feature is the ability to transmit very large quantities of information about the outside world, about lions and rivers and bison and so forth. Another unique feature of our language is an astounding ability to gossip about other people. However, the truly unique feature of our language is not its ability to transmit information about lions or about men. Rather, it's the ability to transmit information about things that don't exist at all. Legends, myths, gods, and religions appeared for the first time with the cognitive revolution. Many animals and many human species could previously also have said something like, "Careful, there is a lion," or "Careful, there is an eagle." But thanks to the cognitive revolution, Homo sapiens acquired the ability to say the lion is the guardian spirit of our tribe, or there is a lion-man spirit which is guarding our tribe. This ability to speak about fictions is the most unique feature of our language. As far as we know, no other animals can speak about things that don't exist. And this is why we can call Sapiens language a fictive language, a language which is able to speak about fiction. Now, it's relatively easy to agree that only Homo sapiens can speak about things that don't really exist. For example, you can never convince a monkey to give you a banana by promising him that after you die, you will get to monkey heaven, and in monkey heaven, you will get limitless bananas for the good deeds that you have done during your lifetime. You can never convince a monkey with such a story to give you a banana to do anything. And you can never convince any other animal to fall for this trick. If you have a cat or a dog at home, try it. You can't convince a dog to give you a bone or to do whatever you want it to do just by promising him that after death you will go to dog heaven. Sapiens is the only animal in the world, in the animal kingdom, that can believe such stories. So this is easy to accept, that only sapiens can believe such stories. But why is it important? And why is it beneficial? One would have thought that this is actually a disadvantage for sapiens, not an advantage. After all, fiction and all kinds of legends and myths, they can be dangerously misleading or distracting. If you go out of the forest and you look for fairies and unicorns that don't really exist, you seem to have less chance of survival than if you go out of the forest and you look for mushrooms and for deer that you can actually gather and eat. Similarly, if you spend hours each day praying and dancing for a non-existent guardian spirit, aren't you just wasting precious time? Time which you better be spending foraging or having sex or doing something for your survival and reproduction. These are good questions. But the fact is that fictive language has been not a disadvantage, but the most important advantage of sapiens over other human species and over other animals. This fictive language is so important because it enables sapiens not merely to imagine things individually in my own imagination, but it enables us to imagine things together, to imagine things collectively. And this enables us to start weaving common legend and myth and stories, such as the biblical creation story, or the Dreamtime myth of Aboriginal Australians, or the nationalist myth of modern states. It is such myth that gave sapiens the unprecedented ability to cooperate flexibly in very large numbers. And this is really the key. You're talking about lots of keys to the sapiens' success. This is the biggest of all. The ability to cooperate flexibly with large numbers of individuals. This is what really made our species masters of the world. Now, there are other species of animals that know how to cooperate with large numbers of individuals. Ants and bees are again a case in point. Ants, for example, thousands, even tens of thousands of ants can cooperate effectively in order to build a nest, guard a nest, find food, take care of the little ants, and so forth. So ants and bees, they solved the problem of how to cooperate effectively with large numbers of strangers, large number of individuals. However, ants and bees don't have much flexibility in the way in which they cooperate. Their cooperation is based on their genetic code, on their DNA, and there is very little flexibility in it. If there is a new challenge, if there is a new opportunity, ants and bees will not be able to suddenly change the entire way in which the beehive or the ant nest function in order to cope with the new threat or the new possibility. Other social animals, like chimpanzees and elephants and wolves and dolphins, they manage to solve this problem of flexibility. Chimpanzees cooperate in far more flexible ways than ants and bees. When there is a new challenge, when there is a new opportunity, they know how to change the ways that they behave, how to change the way that their society faces these threats and opportunities. However, chimpanzees and wolves and dolphins and so forth, they solved the problem of flexibility, but unlike ants and bees, they do not know, they are unable to cooperate in very large numbers. They cooperate only in small numbers of individuals who know each other intimately. Because cooperation in a chimpanzee band, or in an elephant band, or in a wolf pack, it is based on intimate familiarity of all the band members one with the other. And when a chimpanzee encounters a strange chimpanzee, they don't know how to cooperate well towards common purposes. Sapiens is the only animal that that has managed to solve both of these problems simultaneously. Sapiens is the only animal that can cooperate in extremely flexible ways, even more flexible with chimpanzees, with countless numbers of strangers, even more numerous than ants and bees. We cooperate in millions, which is much more than ants can do, and the flexibility of our cooperation, the flexibility of our social system, political system, economic system is much, much more than you can find in chimpanzees or wolves or elephants. And this is why sapiens now rule the world, whereas ants just eat our leftovers, and chimpanzees are locked in zoos and in research laboratories. In order to understand this unique sapiens ability, cooperating flexibly with large numbers of strangers, let us first take a closer look at our chimpanzee cousins, how they behave, how they manage their affairs. Well, these apes, the chimpanzees, they usually live in small troops of about several dozen individuals, maybe 30, maybe 50, maybe 60. They form close friendships, one with the other. They hunt together. Chimpanzees hunt. They hunt small monkeys and small pigs and things like that. So they hunt together. They sometimes fight shoulder to shoulder against enemies like enemy chimpanzees or baboons or cheetahs and things like that. The social structure within the chimpanzee band usually tends to be hierarchical. The dominant member of the band, who is almost always a male, is called by scientists the alpha male. Other males and females exhibit their submission to the alpha male by bowing before him while making grunting sounds, something a bit similar to human subjects bowing before a king. The alpha male usually strives to maintain social harmony within his troop, like a king protecting his subjects against robbers. So the alpha male, when he sees two individuals fight, two chimpanzees fight, he very often will intervene and stop the violence and keep the harmony in the chimpanzee band, in his chimpanzee band. Less generously, the alpha male might monopolize particularly coveted pieces of food, like government taking taxes, so the chimpanzee alpha male will take the best food, often for himself. And he also tends to prevent lower-ranking males from mating with the females, with the fertile females. So this is the alpha male who is the king of the chimpanzee band. If you want to become alpha male, what do you do? So it's not a question of physical strength alone. You cannot just go around beating everybody into submission. A chimpanzee which will go around beating everybody and expecting them to accept them as alpha male will very soon find himself ostracized and will very soon find himself confronting a coalition and will have to change his ways or run away. Actually, you become alpha male, you gain the top position by forging an extensive coalition of supporters, both males and females, from within the groups. There are actually, we have a lot of information about chimpanzee societies from the observations in the last decades, and we have known cases of weak males, not the most powerful around, but a relatively weak male, who managed to become the alpha male because a huge coalition of females preferred to back him against a much stronger rival, stronger in muscles, not in supporters. So the key, the way to become alpha male, if you want to do it, is to build a strong coalition that supports you. Ties between the coalition members are based on intimate daily contact. They hug each other, they touch, they kiss, they groom, they take fleas and ticks and all kinds of things from each other's furs, and they do each other mutual favors. It is just like human politicians who when an election comes, they go around, they shake hands, they make deals, they kiss babies. So male chimpanzees, they do the same thing. When they want to become alpha male, they go around, they hug, they kiss baby chimps, they make all kinds of deals. I'll give you a banana in exchange, you will support me. They don't say it, but from observation we see it, that they give more food to their supporters, and in exchange they expect that in a confrontation, these supporters will come and help them. So the alpha male usually wins his position not because he is physically stronger, but because he leads a large and stable coalition. And when two males fight for the alpha position, their supporters will often come and give them assistance. Coalitions dominate not only the struggle for the top alpha position, but coalitions also dominate many other aspects of chimpanzee daily life. For instance, if a chimpanzee found a particularly coveted piece of food, like some bananas or some nice leaves that they like to eat, then it's more likely that he or she will share this food with members, with close friends who are members of the same coalition, than with a chimpanzee from a rival coalition. There are still good relations most of the time, even between different coalitions, because the chimpanzees have to protect themselves against outside enemies. But within the group, you can clearly see who is friends with whom and who is more in a more distant and colder relationship with the other. There are, however, pretty clear limits to the size of groups that you can fall and maintain in such a way. Because in order to function, this is very important, in order to function in a chimpanzee band, all members of the band must know each other very, very intimately. Two chimpanzees who have never met before, they never fought each other, they never kissed and hugged, they never engaged in mutual grooming, they never shared food. When they encounter for the first time, they will not know the personality one of the other and the history one of the other. So they will not know whether the other is trustworthy. whether it would be worthwhile for them to help the other chimpanzee. They will not know who of them ranks higher. In chimpanzee society, the hierarchy is not just alpha male and then everybody else, but it's like a pyramid. There is ranking also below alpha. There is beta male and gamma male and so forth. And when two chimpanzees meet, the first things that they always have to find out who is higher in the hierarchy, so they will know how to treat one another. This is why, as the number of chimpanzees in a particular group increases, the social order tends to destabilize, and eventually, if the numbers grow too large, it will lead to rupture and to the formation of a new chimpanzee group by a splinter of the original group. Under natural condition, a typical chimpanzee group consists of about 20, 50, 60 individuals. Chimpanzee groups that have more than several dozen individuals tend to suffer from a lot of instability because the different chimpanzees don't know each other very well and they have difficulty knowing who is higher in the hierarchy. And only in very rare cases, zoologists, people who study animals, only in very rare cases, zoologists observed groups of chimpanzees with more than 100 chimpanzees. Because more than that, all the chimpanzees, they don't know each other, they don't know how to behave and cooperate, and the group splits into several separate groups. And separate groups of chimpanzees, they seldom cooperate. In fact, just the opposite happened. Separate groups of chimpanzees tend to compete for territory and to compete for food. Scholars have documented even cases of prolonged warfare between neighboring groups of chimpanzees, including even some famous cases of genocide of one chimpanzee group that over several months or several years systematically killed all or most of the members of a neighboring band. Similar patterns probably dominated the social lives of early humans, including archaic Homo sapiens before the cognitive revolution. Humans, just like chimps, have social instincts that enable their ancestors to form friendships, to establish hierarchies, to hunt together, to fight together. However, like the social instincts of chimpanzees, those of ancient humans were adapted only for small, intimate groups. When the group grew too large, the social order destabilized and the group split. Even, for example, if a particularly fertile valley could feed, say, 500 archaic sapiens, there was no way that so many strangers, 500 people, could live together. Because even if there is enough food around, how could they agree who would be the leader or leaders, who should hunt where, who should mate with whom? It's very complicated. After the cognitive revolution, gossip, the ability to gossip, began to help Homo sapiens to forge larger and more stable bands. You could gossip about the other band members, and that is how you could establish a more stable hierarchy and know everybody without spending 24 hours a day just watching the other people around. If something important happened, you would hear about it. But even gossip, maybe unfortunately, has its limits. You cannot gossip about millions of people. Sociological research has shown that the maximum natural size of a group which is bonded only by gossip is about 150 individuals, because most people cannot intimately know more than 100 individuals, and most people cannot gossip effectively about more than 150 human beings. And this is why even today, a critical threshold in human organizational abilities falls somewhere around this magical number of 150. It's of course not always exactly 150, can be 120 or 180, but somewhere around 150 individuals the human organizational abilities undergo a major transformation. Below this number, communities, businesses, social networks, and military units can maintain themselves, can maintain order based mainly on intimate acquaintance between all the people involved and gossiping about each other. In a small military unit, in a small family business, in a small class at school, there is really no absolute need for regulations, formal ranks, titles, and law books in order to keep order. In armies, for example, a platoon of 30 soldiers, or say a company of 100 soldiers, it can function very well just on the basis of intimate relations between all the soldiers, and there is no absolute need for formal discipline and ranks and regulations and so forth. Very often, even if there are ranks and regulations and law books and so forth, the company is actually behaving in a different way. For example, the law books, the regulation says that the most important person in the company is the lieutenant or the captain of the company. But in actual fact, a very well-respected sergeant, which everybody knows and everybody likes, and has a lot of experience, he can become king of the company and exercise authority even over the captain and the lieutenant. The captain says, do like this, and the sergeant says, no, it's better to be done like that, and they will listen to the sergeant. Similarly, in the economic sphere, a small family business of, say, parents and children and a few helpers, they can survive and flourish without any need of a board of directors, a CEO, an accounting department, and all the laws and regulations of how to conduct business. But once you cross the threshold of 150 individuals, it can no longer work on the basis of these informal arrangements and intimate knowledge. You cannot, for example, run an army division with thousands of soldiers in the same way that you run a small company in which everybody knows everybody else. A successful family business which grows and grows often endangers its own survival. It's very well known from the history of many companies that when small family businesses become big, they face a crisis. If they cannot reinvent themselves and start functioning in a much more formal and hierarchical and rigid way, they will go bust. Because the good, nice ways of handling things when you know everybody else, it just doesn't function anymore when you have to deal with strangers. How did Homo sapiens manage to cross this critical threshold of 150 individuals and eventually start setting up cities with tens of thousands of inhabitants and kingdoms and empires in which hundreds of millions or tens of millions of people lived together and cooperated as part of the same social order? How did sapiens manage to do it when we don't have instincts which are appropriate for this? The secret that enabled sapiens to go beyond the 150 individuals mark and establish all these cities and kingdoms and empires and churches is fictive language. Large numbers of strangers can cooperate successfully by believing in common myth and stories and gods and so forth. If you examine any large-scale human cooperation in the world, it can be a modern state, it can be a medieval church, it can be an ancient city, or an archaic tribe thousands of years ago, you will find that all these kinds of large-scale cooperation are rooted in common fictions, in stories that exist only in the collective imagination of human beings. Take churches, for example. This is the most obvious example, probably. Churches are huge organizations which are rooted, which are based on common religious beliefs, on common religious stories. Two Catholics who never met before and never hugged and never kissed, they can nevertheless go together on crusade, or they can pool funds and cooperate in order to build a hospital, because even though they never met and they don't know each other, they both believe in God, a God that was incarnated in human flesh and allowed himself to be crucified to redeem our sins, Jesus Christ. They both believe in heaven and earth and things like that, in heaven and hell, sorry. So this is why they can cooperate without knowing each other. States are also rooted in common national myth. Two Japanese who never met before might nevertheless risk their lives to save one another because both of them believe in the existence of the Japanese nation and the Japanese homeland and the Japanese flag and so forth. Business corporations are another example. Business corporations are rooted in common economic stories, common economic myth. Two employees of, say, Google, who never met before, can nevertheless join forces, combine their efforts to develop together a new game or a new website, simply because they both believe in the existence of Google, in the existence of dollars, which is what Google is paying for them for their job. Judicial systems are rooted in common legal myth. Two lawyers who never met before can nevertheless combine efforts to defend a complete stranger because they both believe in the existence of laws, of justice, and of human rights. However, none of these things exist outside the stories, the imaginary stories that people invent and tell one another. The fact is, as far as we know, that there are no gods in the universe, there are no nations, there are no corporations, there is no money, there is no such thing as human rights, there are no laws, there is no justice anywhere outside the common imagination of us sapiens and the stories which we tell each other. People, now this sounds fantastic, this to many people may sound outrageous. People easily understand that primitive tribes, someplace in the jungle, cement their social order by believing in ghosts, the spirits, and gathering each full moon to dance together around the campfire. Primitive tribes, they may do so. But what we fail to appreciate is that our modern institutions, like business corporations and states and law courts, they function on exactly the same basis. Take, for example, the world of business corporations. Modern business people and lawyers are in fact very powerful sorcerers. The principal difference between modern sorcerers, lawyers, and the old tribal shamans is simply that modern lawyers tell far stranger stories than ancient shamans. Tribal shamans told stories about the ghosts of your ancestors. They told you that you should behave in such and such a way, otherwise the ghosts of your ancestors will become angry and will punish you. It's easy to understand what a ghost is. It's not a strange tale. A ghost is simply the spirit of a dead person, like grandfather or grandmother. Modern lawyers tell you that you should behave in such and such a way, otherwise a corporation like Google or Microsoft or an organization like the United Nations will become angry and punish you. And this is far more strange. These stories about Google or Microsoft, they are much more difficult to understand than the old stories about ghosts, because you know what a ghost is, but what exactly is a corporation? It's not easy to understand. This is what we'll try to do in the next segment. We will examine this question in detail to see and to try to convince you that even today our modern world is founded on belief in things that exist only in our common imagination, that corporations and states and so forth, they are not really different from the old spirits and ghosts. They are also things that exist only in the common stories which we invent and tell one another, and that there is really no other way. That for the last 70,000 years, and even today in the 21st century, people don't really know how to create effective social cooperation in large numbers without basing it on all kinds of legends and stories and entities that exist only in their minds.